This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 75. Dawn Anderson. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 75 of Experts in the Wire. Dawn, I promise I'm recording this time. This is our second take. I forgot to hit record, but before I introduce Dawn, my guest for today's show, I wanted to share some huge, exciting news about this podcast with you. We had our first month with over 20,000 downloads, and we had one episode already top 4,000 downloads total, and we just had our best day ever, July 9th. I have no idea what happened, but I logged in, we had over 1,300 downloads that one day. So this is all to say thank you. Thank you to everyone out there listening, tuning into the show, subscribing, sharing these episodes. My mission is to provide the best SEO content in audio form. And that's exciting to see kind of the show go from humble beginnings. Our first day, we had 46 downloads, our very first day that we went on air. And we've had no paid ads, nothing like that, just organic growth. So a huge thanks to all of you out there for listening, sharing, and subscribing. And by the way, if you haven't heard my last episode, go back and check it out. It's only 12 minutes, but I would love to know what you think. It's a bit of an experiment, so I would love to hear your thoughts about that. And later, you're going to hear about our one sponsor for today's show, BuzzSumo. But first, I want to welcome my guest, Dawn Anderson. Dawn, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to coming to your side of the pond, as they say. This week, rather.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. What I love was that I messaged you yesterday and I said, we had a cancellation. Could you come be a guest on the show? And I wanted to have you on the show anyways, but here we are in Skype, barely 24 hours later. You didn't even ask what we were going to talk about. And you're literally flying off to Seattle to go to MozCon today or tomorrow, I think. And so I think that really speaks to like when somebody really is experienced at what they're doing, you can just hop on a call and be ready to do an interview just like that. So I feel really honored and excited to speak with you today.
Thank you.
First, I want to...
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, well, I love talking about search. So there you go. It's always good. I love just chatting about search. So
I can tell. So I wanted to go back a little bit and just get a sense of your background. When I look at your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile, I see a lot of acronyms. So I'm curious if you can break down what a few of these are. And I'm gonna bring up your.
Oh God, how embarrassing! But actually, the thing is, I think to myself, I've worked for those, so I'm having those letters. So the MSc part is my master's. I just finished a master's in digital strategy that took me 30 months part-time at Manchester Met University. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I took a postgrad in digital with the Institute of Direct and Digital Marketing, the IDM, which is an industry association. And that took me about a year, and I went off and stayed residential over there down at the IDM, which is a really respected organisation, a little bit similar to the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And what else? So I've just become a fellow. I've just been given a fellowship of the IDM, which is, you can really only get one of those if you're really well established as a marketer. And for me and for some of the listeners, IDM, what is that exactly? The Institute of Direct and Digital Marketing. Yeah, so it's quite a big organisation that's affiliated with the Direct Marketing Association. So, and they have you can take qualifications with them that's akin to a postgrad, so the next level up from a degree, if you like. And I kind of decided to do that in 2012. I've been in SEO for about 7 years by then, and things were changing. So obviously, I was seeing a lot of people leaving SEO, but I didn't want to leave SEO, but I just became aware that actually you have to have quite a breadth as well as the depth of knowledge. So I decided to just go off and just learn more about all the channels.
I think
all
that
the strategy.
That's the question that occurs to me is you were working in SEO, and a lot of us I have no degree in marketing, or my degree is in classical piano, which is almost worthless for the job landscape. So I'm curious, you were working in it, but you decided to go back and get this education and these degrees. Was it purely a desire to learn, or did you see some value in the marketing work that you're doing to get these qualifications?
Massive value, absolutely unbelievable, massive value. I know that people will say, oh, qualifications, they're just academic. But the frameworks that I've learned, the structured way of thinking, the criticality of thinking as well, because, we know that there's never a shortage of opinion in SEO, ever. That is one thing, and that is one thing that we kind of love about it, because obviously there's these really enthusiastic conversations that go on. But taking that, if you like, that structured and rigorous path of learning, it taught me that really you should always be a little bit careful about the opinions that you take on board. Always look for real evidence to back it up. Take a critical view, look at the pros, the cons, always look at every side of the coin, and then pull together the argument based on the body of evidence, yeah?
Right.
But also, taking those studies has also led me down the path of really digging into research papers around information retrieval, crawling, natural language processing, semantics, etc. So it's been wonderful, actually, and I have worked full-time throughout it as a practitioner. But I still love SEO more than any other channel. Yay!
Let's talk about your company. I believe it is called, I'm sorry, I have the name right here.
Move It Marketing.
That's right. Move It Marketing. Yes. Yeah. As you can see, I'm very prepared in my memory here. So I'm curious, can you just set the landscape of your company, the size of it? Is it yourself? Do you have some employees, and the type of work that you do?
Okay, so it's quite small. There's only 3 of us, but we also work. I'm quite a fan of the whole remoters approach. I'm a fan of a lady's stance on this, that actually you don't have to limit yourself to just picking from a pot of expertise that's local to you. Yeah.
Yes.
You can work. We work on the internet. Anywhere we can get a connection to, the internet, we can continue working. So obviously I travel a lot to conferences, I travel a lot to trainings. Some of the staff stay here, some work remotely. I work a lot with other collaborators from other channels as well. So whilst we'll give a whole strategy to a client across a load of channels, because everything works together, primarily the work I do is on the SEO side of it. But I work collaboratively and regularly with a person who is very experienced in PPC and at a managerial level, who's worked for massive agencies but now works for himself. Yeah. So collaboration is very much a mishmash of several things, but to get the best possible results with clients, and clients stay for a long time, generally speaking. Yeah.
We had a lady on the show, by the way, if any listeners want to check that out, the international mobile SEO expert. I'm curious, when you sit down to do your day-to-day, are you doing audits? Are you on phone calls? I'm very curious what that tangibly looks like.
Okay, so a lot of phone calls with clients, a lot of phone calls with clients' team members, yeah. So I'll maybe have a call with the content team via things like Skype primarily, yeah. A call with the developers. I spend a lot of time talking to developers, because a lot of the approaches that we take are very much on SEO through dev, if you like. Yes. So making the site do things that actually present really great information views, working with a lot of data, working with, just making them technically sound and rich in content, but not necessarily just the bloggy type content, but the actual e-commerce content, videos, just everything that is massively relevant and that the audience wants to see on a particular subject, if you like. So yeah, a lot of it is that. I use loads of tools. I fire up the likes of Deep Crawl pretty much every day. Obviously, SEMrush every day. Systrix, loads of these tools. it's kind of a little bit like mission control.
Yes.
If you like.
Yep.
Because for me, SEO is like just an ongoing iterative process. It's not like do one audit, see you,
Yes.
I'll speak to you again in 2 years' time. It's about let's do the initial audit and let's just keep revisiting and being that almost like sprint, agile.
Yes.
I've also taken a lot of courses in project management this past few years as well. So agile practitioner and Prince 2 practitioner and change management practitioner, just because I knew that a lot of the dev teams worked in these different ways. So you have to think like a dev, think like an SEO, think like a marketer.
Yes.
Really, I think.
This brings up, just as I thought in my head, one of the very interesting challenges of doing interviews, because you mentioned a whole handful of things I would actually love to dive into and chat about personally that I think are super interesting. The tools you use, how you do a lot of phone calls, you talk to content teams. I think all that's fascinating, but I want to try to stay course and chat about crawl budget as well and crawling, because I think that's going to hopefully bring the most value to all the listeners here. But one quick thing I wanted to just, not to go too non-linear, I mentioned my former degree or my former career was piano and music. I'm very curious, did you have a prior career before you got into search, before you got into SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was totally and utterly the opposite end of the scale to search. So I've been in search for 10 years now.
Yep.
Prior to that, I owned a building construction company for a decade, and I had loads of tradespeople working for me and an office full of support staff, etc. And I started working on websites to do with lead generation, just tinkering with things, just for the business at the time.
Yep.
But then found my interest in the whole internet side of things overtook my interest in other things, and just changed direction. So completely. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of in my late 40s now, so from time to time, you move in different directions. But obviously, that experience meant that I was able to bring, if you like, the managerial side of things into how I operate my SEO business as such. So totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you were doing real life architecture, not really architecture, but now you're doing web architecture. So I always see some similarities. When I think of a classical composition, there's a structure to it that if you can pull apart what's common with that and then how the web is built, I think there's a lot of cross commonalities that can help give you input for both fields and make you better in each one, that cross learning, which I love. But let's get into crawling and crawl budget. You shared a slide deck on this last week. I reshared it. A lot of people were interested. You said when you spoke about this at PubCon, it got a great response. So I wanted to just dive right into crawl budget. Can you first define what is crawl budget?
So I kind of, I both love and hate that term, because people don't really realize that actually it exists, but it doesn't exist. They have this notion that actually, oh my God, I've got to save this. I've got to really save this pot, because this little pot of attention is going to make a huge amount of difference to my site's rankings, etc. But if you like, notionally, crawl budget is really two things, I would say. One is host load. So that means how much attention can this website take from search engines when crawling? So that's host load. Yeah, that's capacity, because they say that in a lot of papers and patents and journals, they say there's one rule of crawling: do not hurt the website. The number 2 rule of crawling: do not hurt the website. Number 3 rule of crawling: do not hurt the website. The point is, politeness is called, crawling politeness. So if you've got a really slow and shared website, but a million pages that are changing all the time, you're probably not going to get a good crawl, even though you probably have stuff that's very useful on there and you should get a better crawl. But the host can't cope with the load, The other side of it is, how important is what's on there to be crawled And is it something we should go back to frequently? How important is it to visitors? How quickly should it be visited? When should we schedule to come back and see that again? And can we build a pattern, if you like, of change frequency, predictability, probability, etc.? Is this low quality? Does it not change very often? Because there was a really interesting study done years ago by a guy who's actually now at Google, I believe, but was at Microsoft at the time. It was called Dennis Fetterly. And he did a study that looked at the evolution of pages, how quickly and how often they change, if you like. What they found was that low quality near duplicate pages that are very similar to each other, so quite thin, not a lot of difference between them, they don't change very often. When you come back 11 weeks later, they're still pretty much the same. So there's not a big need to actually come back to them very often, because those resources can be used elsewhere, better spent, if you like, on the CNN homepage or on something that's newsworthy or massively relevant to an audience now, or has updated content that actually people want to see the latest version from. So it's that kind of thing. How important is it? And what's the capacity that we can crawl? So it's those two things together: importance, frequency, course load.
And I think
that's our budget. I hope that is a good explanation.
Certainly, and we're going to dive in even deeper. And I think two questions come off of that. One, how does Google determine when a page is important? What are the factors that go into that? And then let's start with that, and then we'll get into my second question.
Okay, so obviously they're not going to necessarily tell us everything, but a lot of the papers actually point to these as factors. And the papers are based on not just patents. I'm not talking about just patents, because obviously we know that the patent may or may not be implemented in the first place, because it's more a case of protecting rather than implementing. But a lot of the academic papers make up those patents, which are respected in, if you like, web crawling and information retrieval academia, which a lot of search engine engineers are part of that community. They say the following things. Obviously, PageRank is a measure of importance, but it's only a part of it. Information, internal link popularity, votes from within the site itself, and obviously whether things change a lot, but not just whether it changes a lot, but what has changed. Because in actual fact, there is, on one of those slides, you'll see that there's a formula there that said what's changed and what is the weight of what changed in that. So, for instance, if a price changes or availability changes, that's probably more important than if the color changed. It's right. Important to users. Obviously, richness of content, important. If something's in a sitemap, an XML sitemap, Gary Esch did an interview with Eric Enge called Virtual Keynote, and actually he said if something's in a sitemap, if you choose to put it in a sitemap, you're indicating that it's more important than just everything being put in there. And I see some pretty impressive strategies by a big website based around including only certain things in XML sitemaps. So, for instance, so there's lots of things. On that slide, there's a whole list of them, loads of them.
So they
all add together.
If we bring it tangibly speaking, maybe to something like a blog post. So you're saying that you can't just make any random change on an old article or blog post because that's random, right? Like Google might not see that as important. So what sort of changes maybe on a piece of content might deem those changes being important enough to be crawled more often?
So, say you update it, say you have a blog post that actually was quite old, a little bit out of date. How many blog posts out there have got old content that really should be updated and appended? Absolutely loads. Freshen these things up, that you'll get crawled. I mean, you're probably going to get crawled if it's got a good page rank anyway, and even though we know the page rank bar is gone, page rank is still used internally by search engine Google. But the point is, update it, keep things fresh. If you're a news site, obviously you're going to get crawled at like a gazillion times a day on a single page because, for instance, The Guardian has these live blogs, etc. That needs to be crawled, and obviously they have like now the API is there as well, so that the crawling on new sites. Add more rich content that's actually more relevant to the subject on that page. So, for instance, there was an interesting study just done recently by SEM Rush that looked at page length, and some pages can rank for absolutely loads of things, and they're going to get crawled quite a lot, obviously, because they trigger up potentially a lot of search for you. It's important to users. So if you've got a page that only really triggers like 10 searches a month or even less or fewer, you're probably not going to get crawled that often because it's not that important.
Interesting.
Scheme of things. Yeah.
So the more queries that you rank for in a given piece of content, that might actually impact crawling because Google's saying, oh, well, more people are interested in.
Important. And actually, this page needs to be. We need to have like the best version of this page because it's important. If you like.
I see.
But there's like this notion. Again, it was in that slide deck that I did. I looked at this notion of search engine embarrassment. Yeah. So actually, what that means is if the probability of this page being visited by a user and it actually being out of date is high, yeah, then they're likely to be embarrassed if somebody goes there and searches and finds that things are out of date. But actually, it's about keeping the most important things up to date in the search, yeah, and making sure that is done efficiently and for scale. And obviously, like anything, in the commercial world, a business is a business, and cost per query is a factor that must be taken into consideration. If masses of crawling is done on rubbish, it drives up the cost per query. Yeah.
So getting back to the importance, your slide here is, I'm going to link to the slide deck in the show notes. The one I'm looking at is slide 32 with your list of things that make a page important. One that you have is Insite anchor text consistency. So does that actually mean literally being consistent with the text you're using to describe the pages you're internally linking to?
I see quite a lot of times where people actually tend to sort of they send the wrong signal. I mean, obviously we know that anchor text is a signal of what this is about. As two is the surrounding text around anchor because obviously it gives a little bit more context as well. Yeah, but I see a lot of times where people don't really. They say that they're linking to dresses with one anchor, but then they're linking to another part of the site, dresses, but they're not actually providing enough context to actually say, well, actually, this is a video about dresses, yeah, or this is actually the shop for dresses, or this is the red dresses, or this blue dresses. So consistency in all of these things helps to strengthen up, if you like, the importance of a page to a subject as such. Yeah.
So you're not only talking about the literal link text, but the co-occurring content around those links as well.
Yeah. I mean, everything. I think the main point is just to make sure that the clues are there. Yeah, the contextual clues make a massive difference. Because if you're like linking on, I don't know, one anchor, and then you're linking to another page with the same anchor, but actually, there's not enough, if you like, strength going to the one that wants to be the target. You will often see this like flitting in and out of like rankings for a particular page and another page, so which one to rank, if you like, for that query as such, because there's not enough contextual relevance to support when we should show this page in which context versus another one, if that makes sense. Yeah,
absolutely does. And so I had a client recently that had the wrong page ranking for something. And so that might be the symptom of this issue. They might not have been clearly linking to that internally. That makes a lot of sense. The second question I wanted to go back to from a few minutes ago was, you mentioned pages that have duplicative content not being crawled as often because it's not changing. So I wanted to circle back to this idea of the duplicate content myth. You talk about that in the slides, and I think that was a good segue into that. So where does this myth come from, and how does it relate to these crawl budget aspects that you're talking about here?
So I don't know, I don't think really people started talking about this myth pre-2010, but it's still I did I looked at how many people's, I think I was looking on the subject of what is the consequence of usage of near duplicate content, and the next query refinements that came up were duplicate content penalty. People are still looking for those, researching that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's obviously a very popular query. So it's kind of a myth that exists, but there's no such thing as a duplicate content penalty. There's just the filters. Yeah. So if something's for me, there's like 4 different types of duplicate content as well that people don't really can't get their head around. Yeah. So 1, duplicate content, which is a pure exact duplicate, literally 2 pages, exactly the same content checksum, i.e., there's, if you measured it as a computer, ones and zeros, it would come to the same. Yeah. That's going to be just immediately filtered. That might be a page with a forward slash and a page without a forward slash. Yeah. Literally everything is the same.
And when you say filtered, you mean filtered out of the search results, correct?
Yeah, exactly. One is picked. If there's a cluster of them that match the same query, and I mean that literally is just filtered straight away anyway, as soon as it's gathered. Yeah.
Yes.
In the search engine, you'll see that they have like the dupe filter. Yeah. In those drawings, literally that's just a dupe. But it seems that there's like various checkpoints for duplicate filtering of various types. Yeah.
Paul Haar mentioned that in the talk he gave at SMX Advanced 2016. He said after they run the rankings, then they take out the duplicates.
Then they dupe. Yeah. But also you have like some other types of duplicates, which are near duplicates, which is things like HTTPS, or things that are actually the boilerplate is the same all around, but the actual content is just pulled in. So if you took away the boilerplate template, like the navigation, the logo, etc., but still the content that was left was the same, that would be near duplicate. So there's a really good example that Monica Hensinger and William Pugh did some research on called Air and Chairs, I think, that showed a really good example of that. I've not put that into a deck yet, but I will do at some point.
Can you say that one more time? We had a little Skype glitch there. What was that called again?
There's a few papers called Detecting Near Duplicate Files, Duplicate Near Duplicate Files. Research that was done by Monica Hensinger and William Pugh. And they're like the papers behind a series of Google patents, actually, on near duplicates. And a good example is the Air and Chairs. I think it's called the Air and Chairs. Shows examples of near duplicates, actually. It's a really good example. And then obviously you have like stitching of content, which is pulling in loads of different feeds together.
Aggregators.
That's a different type of duplicate. And then you have content inclusion, which may be, say for instance, you've got a product, but then you're pulling in reviews. Actually, that could be seen as duplicate content, but it's not, because actually you're adding to the value of the product page by pulling in some additional information. Yeah.
Right.
So it's about the overall view. Does it contribute anything? Yeah. So you can actually do some really exciting things with duplicate content, just different representing information. Does it add value? Yes. Doesn't it? If it doesn't, don't go there.
So my take on it is that there never really was such a thing as a penalty in the sense of, a penguin penalty or a panda penalty that will demote the rankings of your site because you have duplicate content. But how can this be problematic, and what can some people do to help remedy problems that might come about from duplicate content?
But it can kind of have an impact on your site over time, in that actually, if you've got lots of pages that actually you could probably improve by just making them less similar, you could probably gain a lot more visibility for. Yeah, because the users don't want to see a cluster page of 10 results from the same domain, because literally somebody's in the first page of Google. Yeah, they want to have a variety of results. So actually, it's not a case of you're getting penalized. It's the fact that you're actually missing out on a potentially lot of traffic by just having pages that are too similar, because they're going to just pick one. If it's associated with a query cluster, and it might not be the one you want either. People might also link to the wrong one. So then you have a dissipation of page rank shared amongst several types or several URLs. It's not a healthy place to be, but it's not penalizable, but you can improve it. That's the main point. And you can get a lot of rich content out of pages that originally are similar.
You have a few other recommendations for what people can do to improve the crawl aspects. I know crawl budget is sort of the known term for it, but it's really other things as you described. One, for example, I'll just kind of lead you into it, is Breadcrumbs. And I always recommend all my clients use Breadcrumbs. But are there some other sort of like quick wins or actionable items? Sure.
For me, Breadcrumbs, Breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are like gold. I absolutely love them. In fact, I use Breadcrumbs top and bottom because, people, for me, it kind of just reinforces the internal importance, but also sitemaps, some excellent and amazing front-facing sitemaps that people are building out there. XML sitemaps, when you start to look at some of the structures of sitemaps that big sites are using, they're doing some pretty interesting stuff, actually. Mm-hmm. And for me, a great XML sitemap framework for a big site is like the scaffolding or the underpinning beneath it. It's kind of below the surface. It's not necessarily seen by humans unless you're nosy and you go looking like me. Some sites, big sites, actually hide them because they don't want everybody to know their XML sitemap strategy. But it is a very real thing. Mm. Obviously, related content, internal, supplementary, keeping the exploratory scent going for people that are on site, but also for search engines, relevance within those anchors as well, in those titles that are going through to supplementary content. If you like, subcategory to subcategory internal linking, anti and uncle internal linking, so related, if you like. There's loads of stuff you can do with building relationships via internal linking in sites, but also make the content better, make it richer, make it more relevant, add video, add images on a topic. Because again, in that video that Eric did with Gary Eesh, he said, and this actually relates to something that's mentioned a lot in the area of duplicate content. If a grandfather page, so consider that a category page, is of good quality, then they will crawl with more depth. They will give more time to the child pages and the grandchild pages below it because they think that might be a potentially high yielding crawl area, good quality. Yeah.
Interesting.
So work on making amazing category pages, rich, highly relevant, lead people naturally into the next part of their, if you like, berry picking informational discovery. Yeah. Because nobody comes to the dresses page on a website with a view to buy addresses. Yeah. The baton has been handed over to us from search. Yeah. So we have to then make sure that we lead the way and keep that informational scent going for people, help them find what they need. Yeah. So this richness and adding really good navigation into subcategories, prominent subcategory suggestion, using things like internal search. I know that that's not necessarily going to help with your off-site search rankings, but it is actually going to help users find what they need. And that's kind of the most important thing. Yeah. So hopefully that helps.
It absolutely helps. One example that I'm going to write about soon is I have a client that is in the hearing aid space. And 4 or 5 years ago, I looked at their site and I said, you have no static content about hearing aids. So I designed and architected for them a 50-page section with, / hearing aids at the top, and then everything flows in from that. And they've been ranking #1 for hearing aids now for the last 2-3 months or so. Because I think, like you said, the user wants to enter at hearing aids and then find everything about that subtopically.
Exactly. And also, there's a really interesting, very famous paper, actually, that's been cited thousands of times called The Graph Structure of the Web by Andre Broder, who's at Google. He's one of the distinguished search engineers. He's keynoting actually at Wisdom Conference, which is an amazing conference for search and data mining next year. And I'm going as soon as registration opens. I'm in there with a ticket. He talks about something called the bow tie of the web, yeah, and he talks about something called the strongly connected component, which is like, for me, it's almost like a category or a subcategory, something that you just build on, a hub, a topical hub that's the strongest thing ever, strongest URL ever on this subject, yeah,
right.
Because as crawling continues, all the signals, tiny signals, are like a drip. The back gets filled.
Hey everyone, Dan here, just editing the show. Apologies for a few Skype glitches. They only last a few seconds, and then things get a lot better.
The most important URL on the category. It'll reach down to products. It'll reach the products. We also make good product pages as well, but products come and go, yeah. 1 minute they're there, the next they're gone. They're 410, they're 404, they're 30xing. The static pages are the subcategories and categories, and they just can be nurtured massively over time. Stronger. You know, they should never change that URL if you can help it.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to just kind of wrap up this crawling part of the show and ask, at a practical level, you mentioned deep crawl. What are some tools that you use, and how do you sort of not only use the tools, but how what's your process? Do you log in and look at the log files every day, every week? Break that down for us.
Okay, so I what I do is I use a range of tools for log file analysis, server log file analysis. But initial view is I'll look right at the top level, practitioner doctor level, at the search Google search crawl stats. Yeah, bear in mind that is just literally a very, very top level view. And if you've got millions and 404s or 500s, they're not even recorded in there. Yeah.
Right.
So literally, it's 300s and 200s. Yeah, that are in there. Yeah. And obviously, it's all the Google bots as well. So it's not just Google bot organic. It's all the bots.
So
recorded.
I want to make sure the listeners catch that in the crawl stats and Search Console. That's actually all the different Google bots that factor into that. Interesting.
Yeah. I confirmed that, and it's on that deck actually, because I wanted to be sure actually that was the case. Yeah. And I asked John on Twitter, and it is all the Google bots. And as I say, it's also it's only 200s and 300s. So actually you may think, oh wow, I'm not getting a good crawl. But when you look at your logs, you've chopped off a massive section of your website, or you've had a huge amount of server errors. And actually, all you're seeing is 410, hundreds of thousands of 410s, because you literally are you deleted an area, yeah. You're still getting visited, but obviously the 410s, they're pretty important as such, because Google don't want to index 400s at all. But then, go on, sorry.
Is it true that in those crawl stats, that's not just HTML, right? That's JavaScript and images and...
Yeah, CSS, it's a download of a file. Yeah, PDF, yeah, it's file. It literally is file, data files. That's it. So it's every plugin that you've got on your WordPress site.
No kidding.
And actually, plugins are pretty bad for generating random query stuff as well. That actually can waste quite a lot of Googlebot's time. You'd be surprised, CSS, particularly on some of these that are build up. The WordPress plugins that build the self-building ones, where you can literally just drag and drop bits of content. Yeah, so the theme builder type ones, I see that they get they waste a lot of crawling, if you like.
Interesting.
So there's that. So I mean, it's just really, really very, very tough. So a healthy site that actually you've not made any dramatic changes on for quite a while, so you haven't chopped off its leg, a section that was massive, or you haven't migrated from one domain to another, or you haven't switched protocol. If you switch from HTTP to HTTPS, you're going to see a massive increase in crawl activity. Yeah. But it's literally just 300 301s, or 302s if you don't do it by 301. It's literally just loads and loads of that. It's not that you're getting masses of crawls, it's just that you're getting 301, 200, 301, 200, 301, 200. It looks like more, but actually it's just 2 steps at a time. So there's that. So then after I've looked at Search Console and got a little bit of a view, I will go in and I will ask the server guys generally, or I'll go onto the server and I'll look at the logs, and they're pretty easy to find. On an Apache server, for instance, literally just says logs,
Yep.
And you can either download them raw, or you can ask your server guys to do a grep command to just export a kind of find on Googlebot type thing. So, and they will and just export those, because otherwise logs, you could have like gazillions of logs. Really, you're just hunting for Googlebot in there, or other search engine crawlers or whatever, or bots. I have it set up on a cron job. So another pro tip is that if you have a HTTP and a HTTPS version, you're going to have like 2 sets of logs. Yeah? So then you need to combine the 2 together later to consolidate it. I just set it all up so that it automatically it configures with Logly. So the server speaks to Logly and just sends data across. And the server guys have just implemented a command line there to just send it across automatically. And then you start to see some patterns developing. You start to see a lot of waste often. A lot of things actually still being visited that you thought were dead and gone a long, long time ago, such as old XML sitemaps that people plonked on the server and that you probably can't see from your WordPress admin area.
Right.
Things like revisit htaccess and see whether any rules are like implemented that are just running things in an order that can be re-optimized for. Because that all gets run in a specific order, you can chop it back and optimize it. Lots of stuff that you can do. Yeah.
Wow, very
and
interesting.
Also just general crawl tool, just to get that very top level. Yeah. So like deep crawl, really good. There's loads. I use all of them because I think it's important to look at lots and lots of data points. Not all tools are perfect. In fact, no tool is perfect. So we have to look at everything.
So I should probably mention the sponsor quickly, BuzzSumo. I know you use a lot of tools. Do you use BuzzSumo? Have you checked them out?
Yeah, for topical stuff, etc. To get an idea of kind of popularity, etc. I've used them. I don't do a huge amount on the actual outreachy type side of things.
That's right.
I work with some content marketers, again, really, really good content marketers that actually work on the outreach strategy kind of side of things. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I've been checking out their alerts feature a lot lately, and I set one up from the name of my podcast. And what's interesting is there's people mentioning my show. I had no idea that they were linking to it or mentioning it or including me in a list of top podcasts. So it gives me the ability to, find those posts, leave a comment, say thanks, tweet out the article. And in fact, I was actually interviewed on a podcast and the guy didn't follow back up with me and tell me that my interview is live. I never would have known, but it showed in the alerts. And so then I was able to share that on my LinkedIn and etc. So not only is it great for, like you said, all the data they provide, the social share numbers, the outreach possibilities, but just these alerts alone have been giving me a lot of value to help kind of connect with these people that are finding the show. So the folks at BuzzSumo have very nicely given me a discount code. It is Dan Shore, DANSHURE, no spaces. If you use that code at buzzsumo.com, you will get 30% off 3 months. I ran the numbers. It's like $50 or $75 or something you'll save to take advantage of that code. So that's discount code Dan Shore, SHURE, on buzzsumo.com. 30% off, 3 months. Check it out. And if anybody has questions or want to just shoot me an email or a tweet or something and let me know if you like the tool, if you have questions, hit me up. I'd be happy to help you out with that. So Dawn, let's kind of talk just for a minute or two about the migration impacts that these crawl issues could have. And maybe we can touch upon just a few things that the listeners can be aware of or maybe be looking out for when it comes to the challenges of migrations and crawling.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, well, I think one of the most important things to bear in mind is that crawl budget is apportioned at an IP level, not a domain level, so not a site level. So this is one of the things that I think people seem to think that, oh yeah, this is a crawl budget per site. It's not. It's at so say you have like 10 sites, yeah, and you're kind of running them all and you're doing lots of migration, etc. This crawl budget is apportioned across all of the sites, all of the subdomains, etc. Yeah. So that's worth knowing for a start. But also, when you start to migrate, because obviously you'll have a lot of stuff on there that maybe is like, if it's a big site, you might have stuff on there that's like years old, not very important, never visited by humans for a long, long time. Why on earth should, just because you want to migrate something over, why on earth should Google suddenly rush over, drop everything, drop visiting the CNN homepage because you're migrating? Yeah, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So what will happen is you might start to see a bit of a pickup in like activity as Google bot realizes that actually, there's a change going on over there. We need to sort of pick up the pace a little bit. Yeah. But it'll still be scheduled. It'll still be, the Google bot's got a lot of sites to visit and you're not necessarily going to be the number one priority. And what happens in that whole process is that actually the signals take quite a long time to pass across. So you might have all the different internal links that add up to your overall relevance, if you like. If you're leaving half of it behind because only half of your site is actually migrated in SERPs or being crawled, you're going to probably start to see some drop off in rankings for a temporary period of time. So it's really important that you make sure that all the signals are aligned. One big thing that I see a lot is that when people do migrations to say, a new website, they don't update a lot of their internal links. Yeah. So things are still going across to old sites. That's a account against a migration. Mm-hmm. But also one other thing as well is that when people go to HTTPS, they often then don't bother to update the XML sitemap. So they leave all the old links in the XML sitemap to the HTTP. That's really pretty common. And they also don't update the canonicals. They forget to do that. So you're kind of saying in one hand, migrate to HTTPS, but also we're canonicalizing to HTTP. Obviously, this signal is probably going to go in favor of HTTPS because canonical secure gets a higher vote. But if you're then linking internally to an XML sitemap on HTTP, chances are that's also going to have sort of a score. So it can get messy unless you get all signals aligned. And either way, it's going to take a little bit of time anyway.
So other than maybe updating internal links or the sitemap or the canonicals, are there some other things webmasters, site owners can do to nudge Google along a little bit? I know there's a site move. Do you do a site move when you do HTTPS migration? I forget. I don't think you do, but
no, you don't. Yeah. No. And in actual fact, that's one thing that I would always keep every single site that I'd ever moved or had a HTTPS and a HTTP and a WW and a non-WW version. I would always keep them all verified in Google Search Console because it's a good way of seeing if there's activity going on over there. And you will find that actually one will go down in indexation and one will go up in indexation. And it's just a good way to keep peace of mind. But what you can do is you can remove the sitemaps, if you like, from the old site, yeah, and make sure you have all your sitemaps in the new site. Yeah. In Search Console. You can do a lot of stuff with strengthening up more internal links to categories and subcategories in the new site so that the importance of those is emphasized over and over again. There's loads of stuff that you can do, really. You could say, ping Google if it's a small site, but in actual fact, you've got a limit on how many times you can do that. And if it's a big migration, it's probably just not scalable.
So I know we're a few minutes over. Do you have a few more minutes?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to check. I like to respect the time of my guests for being on the show. I had a few other kind of maybe randomish questions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your speaking. Before we get to that, though, do you have any tips for asking Googlers questions? I know you do this a ton on Twitter. You mentioned, messaging John and so forth. What are some things that for anyone out there that's like, I want to approach John or Gary or somebody at Google, how can they frame a good question or approach them in a way where they, might get a good answer back from them?
I think the biggest point is you just got to be polite. Have good manners. They get you a long way, generally speaking. And I found a ton of people on Twitter very, very helpful. Not just John and Gary. People who've been in the industry a long time. I find that if you're pleasant, genuine, you're not looking to have a fight with somebody, they tend to be quite helpful overall. And if you go to people with a bone of contention, but you actually have some evidence to support it, then they'll respect that, and you'll get good responses overall. So I think don't be afraid to just shout out and say, hey, do you mind if I ask a question? But politeness goes a long way. Yeah.
I think that's a great tip. So you also ran a little Twitter poll on speed tools. I'm curious what the context of that was. Were you just doing your own research? Is this maybe a little teaser for what you might talk about at MozCon? What was that poll all about, and what did you find out from that poll?
Yeah, so actually, I was doing some speed testing with one of the projects that I work on. And what I found was that however many things I did to speed up a site, so I put it on Cloudflare, I did quite a bit of compression. I did, but the compression was on Cloudflare. I did things like I added Railgun. I did loads of things. And I was testing on GT metrics, and that was giving me lots of positive scores. So A for this, and I think it was just B for 88, so nearly A on one of the other tools. But then I found that when I tested it on Google's page speed tool, Insights tool, it didn't take into consideration any of the factors that had been added by Cloudflare. So I reached out to Gary and said, why is this? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, actually, if that's the case, actually, page speed tool doesn't take into consideration anything Cloudflare has added. So obviously, that's just after caching, yeah? So a conversation started about, tools, etc. And so a few were saying, I use this, I use that, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, speed is a massive, massive deal now, especially as we know that the chances are people are going to start wanting to search and do things with functionality such as filters and heuristics on your site. You need it to be fast. So I just ran this poll, and, there was a good engagement. People are really engaged with trying to make websites fast nowadays. That's important.
Was there a clear winner?
It was GT metrics, yeah.
Huh.
But from what I hear, Gary said that they are looking to do some stuff on this page speed tool thing, and maybe they'll start to look at caching. Not caching, but taking into consideration the Cloudflare changes. But what I did find is this. Actually, even though Cloudflare is producing these things like image optimization and zipping and compression of JavaScript and CSS and HTML on their side, if you can do it on your server, that makes a massive difference. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So actually, go and optimize the images and use things like I can't remember. There's loads of tools now to just optimize and compress images and then upload them again, because it's kind of closing the door after the horse is bolted when you're doing it through Cloudflare. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do the things like press the Apache optimize button. Yeah. Well, test it, obviously. and move the JavaScript so that they're like not necessarily all loading immediately at the top of the page. Yeah. So do things like that and leverage browser caching on images that never change or very rarely change. So there's lots of things you can do. Yeah.
You've been tweeting a ton about not just like SEO marketing related conferences, but information retrieval events, which I find really cool because it's sort of this like scientific area of what SEO actually is. So are there a few events you'd recommend in this sort of realm of information retrieval?
Yeah. Well, I've only really just started going to them, but the Wisdom conference, which was in Cambridge this year, it blew my mind. It was amazing. I mean, I literally had to keep my mouth shut because these are like uber geeks. And I'm like, I'm not talking because they're just like, we think we're geeky. We are not geeky. They are geeky. But it was so intriguing. It was like, oh, wow. I was amazed at it. It was wonderful. So there's that. And that's on next year in San Francisco, I believe. And I'm going to that. Apparently, there's an amazing, bigger conference that's, by the way, Wisdom means Web Search and Data Mining Conference. So it's literally about the science of mining the web, just mining search, algorithms, natural language processing, semantics, all the things that us SEOs are trying to learn about. And these are experts in it. You know, they do it every day. So there's that one. And actually, I've just signed up to go to the European summer school in information retrieval that's run by a few, I think it's people from Yahoo, Google, and Ricardo Bieza-Yates, who used to be at Yahoo Research, who's a really, really interesting fellow. He runs it. He's a professor at Barcelona University. And so he's running that, so I'm going. Yeah, and his book's amazing, Information Retrieval, Modern Information Retrieval. I'm
going to link to those and any others you can find in the show notes. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's, if any SEOs out there have hit a ceiling where you feel like you can't get anything new out of the typical SEO conferences, this might be the thing that you're looking for. I think it's really great that you're sharing these events. So to segue into your speaking, you speak a ton. And so my first curiosity was, how much time do you spend making slides? It seems like you've been doing a lot of researching and
yeah, a long time. And I have like a bit of I don't know, I think, you know, so I get some of the feedback I get is that your slides are really good, and I love the fact that we can refer back and we know what you were talking about at the time, and we don't necessarily have to have been at the conference, etc., and we can learn from it. And then others say, oh, there's too much noise on there when you're talking, etc. So I'm trying to find a balance between actually making sure that people don't feel overwhelmed by them, but also having something that will stand the test of time that people can use in the future, like the one from PubCon, which had a load of stuff on it, and that people actually still like look at regularly to this day. That's only a year ago. Lost my thread there. So they do take me a long, long time. I put a lot of stuff on there, and yeah, and I'm not very good at PowerPoint, but they take me forever. But a lot of them, it's kind of cumulative research that I'm doing. It's like an ongoing research process. The more I learn, the more I want to put into them. I always have to like chop them down to smaller because I want to just blurt everything out.
I can totally relate to that. Anytime I sit down to do a blog post, I realize I'm like, my brain is going to like wanting to write a book because I can't stop. I have a hard time thinking of these small little concise things. I think in the holistic manner. So as you've been doing these presentations, they're on very dense technical, topics. Have you learned along the way any ways to make these a little bit more interesting for people? Because one of my challenges here with this podcast is, how do we cover technical SEO or on-site SEO or something that's a little dense in nature and make it interesting? And I noticed you tweeting a lot of GIFs for your MozCon presentation coming up. So I'm curious if you have any tips for that line of thinking there.
Well, yeah, I think Yeah, I think it's important to try and keep it kind of quite light as well. And that's what I'm learning as I go along a little bit, because the academic stuff, whilst it is the foundations of search, and actually, I remember Bill Slowski saying, I don't read patents just to be clever. I read patents just so I can become a better SEO. And he's right, yeah,
Yep.
because it's kind of looking at the research before it's in practice. So you're kind of hoping to be ahead of the curve in some ways, looking at where it's going next. But also, it can be a bit dry if people are more visual people, or they're more content, creatively led type people. So I started to put in a little things that bring a little bit more humor into it, for instance. So obviously, I've got a Pomeranian called Bert, which I don't know. A lot of people know I've got Bert.
Like, this is your actual pet dog you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah. I've got a Pomeranian called Bert. If you look on any of my social media things, apart from LinkedIn, which of course nobody ever puts anything Pomeranian-y on LinkedIn, there's loads of pictures of Bert. So I started to add a little bit of humour to it to lighten the load. I'm trying to do a little bit more analogy type stuff to try and bring some of the concepts into the world, the normal world, if you like.
Yes.
And make them a little bit more easier to consume. But I mean, part of the reason why I do slides that have a ton of information on is that so that people can just keep using them and picking up and revisiting them later, because there will be too much to take in if it's a new thing really that you've not heard a lot about before.
Yes.
And my thoughts are, well, I prefer that if people have a takeaway. I really should maybe have two versions of slides. One is a delivery one, which is snappy and quick and just really the bites, the bites, if you like. Mm-hmm. And then Bill was saying and suggested the other day, Bill Slowski, why don't you have a web version that you put on SlideShare and it's the whole ton of information. So, and Marion Sweeney said the appendix is my friend, so add stuff there. So I'm trying to find a way to get the good balance between the two. I
think that's the answer. You have your presentation version and the online version. I think that really makes sense because they're two totally different environments and scenarios. I also wanted to know, do you remember how you landed your first speaking engagement? And I ask because, I'd like to get out there and speak a little bit more. Maybe some of the listeners were as well. So how did you kind of get into the speaking thing? Do you remember your first engagement, or how could somebody maybe start getting these types of speaking gigs?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the first time I ever spoke, somebody emailed me and asked me if I would speak. And I was like, oh my God, when you get an email and your mouth drops open.
And do you remember what?
Kelvin from Brighton SEO.
Uh-huh.
He just emailed me and said, hi, Dawn, I've been looking for some new speakers and your name came up quite a lot. And would you be interested? And I was like, oh my God, I wasn't sure whether to actually say yes, because I'd never spoken before. I was incredibly nervous about it, overwhelmed, worried. Oh my God, I'll be judged, etc. And so he emailed me. But what I would say is that actually there's a ton of smaller meetups where people are looking for people to share knowledge and information. Yeah. So maybe start off by actually looking for some of these, I know that the multi-channel in the UK, there's the multi-channel e-commerce, the e-commerce marketing meetups, yeah, and they're always looking for speakers throughout the whole of the UK. They're always emailing me saying, hey, do you know any speakers on this subject? Video, for instance. I know Calvin was looking for somebody at video SEO. So if you've got something that you do which is different or which you can bring a new spin on, just look for this. Look at any conference and look for the speaking tab, yeah? And just put in a pitch, have a go, put your spin on it and just, submit and see what happens. And don't be offended if at first you don't necessarily get much traction. You can't be successful for everything you try to do.
Oh, sure, you got to take those chances.
Every pitch, you're not going to necessarily get accepted for everything.
And maybe, do they have meetup.com in the UK? I know here we can go to meetup.com and look for all types of meetups locally.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we have Meetup, we have Eventbrite. there's we are not short of conferences and events in the world, how we know that they're everywhere. And there's going to be loads of opportunities. People are not necessarily going to come beating on your door. You've got to push yourself out there. Think about something that you could talk about, something that you tested maybe that you think, oh my God, that's a bit of a purple patch. I've hit that. You might not want to share it. You might be like, this is all mine. I'm keeping this SEO success to myself.
Yeah.
But you might also think, oh, actually, this could be really interesting and useful. And go out there and just talk about it a little bit.
So to segue as we wrap things up in just a moment here, you're going to be flying out to MozCon today, tomorrow?
No, Thursday morning at 6 o'clock.
Thursday morning. So
I have not even thought about what I'm taking yet. I fly by the seat of my pants constantly. That means I wing it through life.
I can totally relate. So can you give the listeners, because I'm going to post this show pre-MozCon in a day or two, can you give us a tiny teaser on what you're talking about at MozCon? Just a couple sentences worth. Yeah,
exactly. I can definitely. So I just did my master's dissertation. I just completed it. I just got my results, so I was pleased I passed. Hurrah. But my master's dissertation took me 9 months of research, and I was actually looking at the area of potential conflicts between consumer choice theory and web crawling efficiency. Because obviously what we do typically now in SEO is we tend to sort of think, hey, let's go fat and flat with our e-commerce sites and output hundreds of products all at once, because we want the crawl, But obviously then there is this area of consumer choice theory, which is very strongly in favour of limiting choice, not overwhelming. What tends to happen is the fewer choices, the more people buy. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that, So it's about trying to find a way in which we can help people, once they come to us from search, to actually not only rank, but also to find what they need, So to find that happy ground between humans and search engines in both crawling and choosing, So it's actually on that area.
Very cool. And I won't let you give away the whole thing. So I know Moz does share the videos afterwards. I believe they're available as well. So I'll make sure to go link to your presentation after the fact, after you've given it at MozCon. And for anybody there, definitely go say hello to Dawn. I'm sure you'll be around mingling and saying hi to people. Before we wrap things up, as you hear me fading up the music here, where can people find you and connect with you online?
So they can find me on Twitter at Dawnieando, DAWNIEANDO, Dawnieando. And they can find me on, I'm quite open to, new friends on Facebook. So I'm not precious. I don't really have much to hide. So Facebook, they can find me, Dawn Anderson. And they can find me on LinkedIn as well, Dawn Anderson.
And your company's website again?
What's that?
Your company's website?
Oh yeah, sorry. Got Movement Marketing. They can find me at Movement Marketing as well. So my company website. So that's there. Well, movementmarketing.co.uk. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dawn, thank you very much again for joining us at last moment's notice here on Experts in the Wire. It was great speaking with you, and I'm going to fade up the music here and wrap things up for today. And we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.